Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Notebook Q. In this video I'm looking at the new reward aircraft, the Tier 7 British light fighter, the Martin-Baker MB.5. Hello there, it's November 2023 and therefore it is World of Warplanes' 10th birthday, hence the cake in the background here. To celebrate the fact, the World of Warplanes team have released a new Tier 7 British light fighter, the Martin-Baker MB.5. Here it is in front of you. This aircraft never saw service. In fact, only one prototype was ever built, although there was an earlier prototype designated the MB3. And sometime after the event, it garnered rather good reviews. For instance, Captain Eric Brown, a test pilot, speaking apparently in 1948, said this: "In my opinion, this is an outstanding aircraft, particularly when regarded in the light of the fact that it made its maiden flight as early as 23rd May 1944. The problem being is that by the time this aircraft was being developed as a potential replacement for the Spitfire, the RAF was beginning to turn its attention to jet aircraft, and this project was not pursued." It's been introduced as something like a Spitfire into the game by the World of Warplanes team. It has somewhat similar armament, it has somewhat similar characteristics in terms of manoeuvrability. It does, in theory, feature a very high boost maximum speed, but we're going to talk about that a bit later. And unfortunately the guns are also Tier 6. So what we'll do now is we'll take a look at the numbers and we'll begin to break this aircraft down. Here we have a spreadsheet featuring all of the Tier 7 fighters. There are a lot of them. I'm going to scroll sideways, and I think I'm right in saying that there are actually 19 of those. Now, this is your chance to pause the video as we scroll across so you can have a look at the figures if that's what you want to do. As you can see, they're going a long way off the end there. Okay, if you don't know how this spreadsheet works, there's a link in the description below to another video which will explain what's going on here. So if we take a look at the armament, the rating is 21 and the cumulative DPS is 360. And it comes from 4 20mm Hispano cannons, and that may surprise you if you know the game, because the Meteor has 4 20mm Hispano cannons, but it has 460 DPS. And the reason being is, as I alluded to in the first impressions section, these are the Tier 6 Mark IIs and not the Mark Vs that the Meteor carries. And that's a bit of a disappointment. So the DPS is 90 per cannon, the rate of fire 400, the range is 2,231 feet, auto aim angle of 2.5 degrees, which is a little bit miserly. That's the amount you can be off target by, and the game corrects your aim for you. 3 degrees is more common. 0.6 dispersion angle, perfectly standard for cannons. That's the way the bullets spread out as they leave the muzzle of the gun, or the shells the muzzle of the cannon. The overheat is 5 seconds, which is just enough to be tricky. You have to be careful about not overheating these guns. And the shell velocity is fairly low at 1240. You have to give a lot of lead when aircraft are banking. So the gun armament is okay, but it's not brilliant, and it will struggle, certainly trying to shoot down P61s at Tier 8. We just drop down, we can see that it's not actually red, so there are aircraft at this tier which have got worse guns, even though, as I say, these are the Tier 6 Hispano cannons. Survivability, pretty much of a muchness for all of the fighters, of course. It's rated at 7, 300 hit points. Damage resistance is 43, but here's the critical figure. In the puff for the aircraft, when it was introduced into the game earlier in October, they mentioned that as a prototype it had poor resistances. Well, the damage resistance is okay at 43, but the fire resistance is only 30, and this is awkward. And it's going to make mounting an uprated engine, if this is what you would like to do, a bit tricky, because you're probably going to have to take countermeasures against fire, such as mounting a fire extinguisher. Painful if your pilot keeps on getting shot out, as it often does on the EU server, or having to use either of fire resistance or firefighter skills, or indeed both, and thus consuming skill points on your pilot. Airspeed rating is 54, which is actually pretty good, because what's up against it here are not the turn fighters, but actually most of the high altitude, high energy fighters. And at first blush, it looks like it's competitive with those in terms of its cruise speed and its boost maximum speed. If we just scroll across and have a look at some of the turn fighters, you can see that the ratings are significantly less in many cases. However, there's a catch here. This 460 boost maximum speed seems like it's really good. in my experience, you are going to struggle to get anywhere near that. The acceleration of the aircraft, and we'll talk about the power to weight ratio shortly, is not good. And what I found, having flown the aircraft, is that if you use up all of your 8 seconds boost, assuming you haven't put on a boost mixture, a combined boost mixture injection system, and therefore have the full 8 seconds, you still won't get to 460. In fact, the only way I was able to get this aircraft approaching its boost maximum speed was to put it into a fairly steep dive. And considering its altitude performance is fairly poor, you're not really going to want to do that too often. Now, you may think about trying to ameliorate that by fitting either the uprated engine, well, there's the fire risk, because that will bring your cruise speed up nearer to the boost maximum speed. So in theory, you should be able to get to the more easily get to the maximum speed. That doesn't work. I've tried it. Or you can fit that boost combined boost mixture injection system, because there is a bonus characteristic which gives you greater acceleration, and see if you can get to it that way. Well, I'm afraid that doesn't work either, and of course you lose quite a bit of your boost when you do that. So the news is that this is a bit of a fiction. Getting to 460 in level flight certainly is going to be quite rare. We look at the maneuverability, it's significantly better than the fighters that are next to it, because these are the high energy fighters. It's rated at 82. And if we look across at the fighters that are term fighters, we can see, for instance, the Spitfire 9 has got a rating of 82, the 16 87, 82 on the Yak 3T, and then you start getting into fighters with significantly greater maneuverability, although it's not that far off the key 84 Hayate. So this is a pretty maneuverable plane, and it's got that fairly decent roll rate, which comes with the clipped wing Spitfire as well. So controllability is a bit of a disappointment at 80.6. Aircraft isn't going to respond quite as quickly to instructions to change direction as you would like, but it's snappy enough. Now, the altitude performance. Having said the airspeed is like a high energy fighter, although actually it's not, because that boost maximum speed doesn't seem to be attainable very easily. The altitude performance is distinctly lacking if you think of it as a high energy fighter. It is definitely a fairly low to mid altitude term fighter. You've got 62, 62, 55, 43, and that's the Meteor, which isn't a particularly good high altitude fighter. 64, 62, and it's not until you get to the turn fighters up at the end here that you start seeing similar figures, such as 34, 40 for the Spitfire 9, 37 for the clipped wings Spitfire 16, and so on. So altitude performance definitely consigns it to the role of low to mid altitude fighting, and very much balances it towards turn fighting because of that maneuverability. If you could get that boost speed going, it would be quite interesting, but since you can't, not in level flight, it's beginning to look to me as if this is an out-and-out turn fighter in the mode of manner of a Spitfire. And finally, we come to power to weight ratios, and here we may have a clue as to why the aircraft struggles to get up to that boost maximum speed. This is a pretty low power to weight ratio. The aircraft simply doesn't accelerate very well. Well, the Mustangs don't either, but then they're diving, because you should be flying them up and down and not round and round. This one's going to be flying round and round, and if you have a heavy fly past you, that boost speed implies that you should be able to start accelerating after it pretty damn quickly, and unfortunately you can't. If we go down and look at the figures in red, you can see that damage resistance is actually worst in class, even though it's only slightly less than the Josephine, for instance, and some of the others. But the fire resistance is very low. Boost duration, the figures for boost are fairly compressed, so we don't need to worry about that. Performance characteristics degrade quite quickly as well. The minimum, maximum, optimum speed range is actually quite low for this aircraft, so you're going to find yourself getting out of sync, out of your best performance fairly easily. Stall speed, by the way, is 96, which you're probably not going to be using too often. And then you have the altitude performance, where you can see some red, and you can forget the thrust to weight figure. This is power to weight ratio here is not actually the worst in class, but believe you me, flying it, it feels like it. It is very stodgy when you try and get this aircraft accelerating. So, my opinion, having flown the aircraft a few times, is that you're probably going to best fly this pretty much like a Spitfire 16, a low altitude dogfighter, and probably ignore that boost maximum speed, because frankly, you're just not going to get there. Here we are with the MB5 on the tarmac outside my hangar again, and before I talk about how I've set the aircraft up, let's talk about what I call the livery, what the World of Warplanes team calls the decoration set, what you may call the camouflage, and I think it can be fairly said that the art department has flung a pot of paint at this one. Lots of emblems all over the wings and over the fuselage, including one referring to the fact that it's 10 years of World of Warplanes. And those of you who prefer historical camouflages will probably immediately go for the seasonal camouflages and mount those rather than this. If you do mount this, what do you get? Well, if you specialise the aircraft, you can convert this 5% aircraft experience into 5% crew experience by ticking accelerate crew training. From the nose, if we can get it to come up, there we go, 5% crew experience, and from the emblem, which is a Martin-Baker emblem actually, 2% crew experience, so fairly standard there. When you first get this aircraft, you will find that you have 4 equipment slots, of which one is blocked, and that's one on the airframe. There's nothing on the forward firing weapons, and regrettably, in my opinion, you've only got 1 slot on the engine, which means you've got to make a choice between lightweight power unit, uprated engine, or the combined boost mixture injection system. At least I think those would be the choices you'd be looking for. You've got 5 slots on the consumables, 2 on the airframe, of which one is locked when you first get the aircraft. Now my aircraft is specialised, so let's pop it into specialist configuration, and let's have a look at what I've done with the aircraft. And I've tried several combinations here, and this is the one I've settled on which suits me. Gun sight to improve the accuracy of the guns, and if we look at the bonus characteristics, because these guns are fairly low DPS, I've chosen to go for increasing the chance of causing a fire and increasing the chance of critical damage. The accuracy is good enough not to go for the other items in my opinion. However, if you do want to, there's no reason not to pick the 5% accuracy when firing at moving targets and the 3% accuracy overall to reduce the dispersion angle. And if you're worried about pilot injury, particularly if you've mounted an uprated engine, then probably I'd recommend you go for the 5% pilot's resistance to injury. And then we've gone for a manoeuvrability build with a lightweight power unit and a lightweight wing frame, and then we've put on polished skin to try and increase the speed of the aircraft a bit. If you want to get absolute maximum manoeuvrability, then I would suggest that you put on the reinforced skin, because that doesn't affect the manoeuvrability. However, that will reduce the speed of the aircraft. You may not think that too much of a problem, given that you don't seem to be able to get to the maximum figures that are illustrated in UI anyway. And on the lightweight wing frame, we've gone for full manoeuvrability here. Roll manoeuvrability twice and yaw manoeuvrability. Your other alternatives are wings resistance to critical damage, more aircraft HP, or more cruise speed. You may want to pick some of those. I've concentrated on manoeuvrability here, so those aren't the ones I want. On the lightweight power unit, I've gone for the yaw manoeuvrability, and then I've increased the cruise speed and the acceleration with boost activated because it's very sluggish, but 1% is not going to make a lot of difference. Your alternatives there are 0.5% cruise speed, which is not as good as the 1%. Acceleration without boost, well, you could pick that one, I guess, and 5% extra resistance to damage for the engine. Polished skin, get extra cruise speed, of course, and extra acceleration when diving, although this is not a high altitude fighter, so to a degree that's not that useful. You lose a bit of yaw manoeuvrability and manoeuvrability in turns. I've opted for 3% acceleration while diving, 1% yaw manoeuvrability, and 1% manoeuvrability in turns, and I think those are the only two which give you more manoeuvrability. You could have more acceleration whilst diving, more cruise speed, and more maximum speed with boost activated, which, since you can't get to the actual maximum, would be fairly futile in my opinion. I have tried both a combined mixture injection system, boost mixture injection system here, which of course increases the maximum boost speed, which isn't particularly useful, but also provides you with a bonus characteristic to improve the acceleration of the aircraft. That didn't really work for me, but you might want to try it. If you want to mount the uprated engine on the theory that if you've got the aircraft generally going faster, you might get closer to the maximum boost speed, then beware. I remind you that the survivability figure here for the resistance to fire is only 30. You're likely to bring that down into the region of, say, 22 to 25, and at that point you're having to think about either fitting a fire extinguisher or perhaps using a pair of some valuable skill points for possibly fire resistance, firefighter, or indeed both of them. So bear that in mind. That didn't work for me either. I found the aircraft still felt pretty sluggish even with the speed equipment, both of them, the uprated engine and the combined boost mixture injection system. I will show you the post-build in the post-build effects section those builds, so you can get a feel for the numbers, and then you can make an informed choice as to whether you want to try and do it the way I've done it, or whether you would like to try and improve the aircraft in a different way. Consumables, pretty standard for me in this case. Because I haven't fitted the uprated engine, I feel okay with the first aid dressing package. I didn't find the pilot getting shot at too often. To be fair, I wasn't chasing bombers with overpowered guns very often. So probably that's fine. Pneumatic control assist for extra manoeuvrability for 10 seconds, perhaps if I'm fighting a Spitfire or something like that. If my control surfaces get damaged, I've mounted the emergency control system to repair them. Engine cooling, 10 seconds of extra boost if I've got any boost at all, and then universal ammunition. Right, time to discuss pilot skills. When talking about the pilot, if you are going to pursue the manoeuvrability build that I've just shown you, then there's an obvious special pilot that you may want to use in the aircraft, and this is Millie Elliott. And this is because she has this air acrobat skill. Now, you don't have to have that skill selected for Millie Elliott, but it would make sense in this particular case. And why? Well, that gives you 4% increased manoeuvrability in all axes. It replaces the aerobatic skill, unfortunately, but that only gives you 2% in those same axes. And of course, then you've also got the aerodynamics expert. So you can see here that this isn't a particularly well-trained Millie Elliott, because this is the press account, and I haven't invested the time on the pilot, nor have I used free experience to boost her skills. And therefore, these are the only two that are in operation. The mastery skill here, the Tornado Master, which would be lovely to have on the MB5, is not active. Where would I go elsewhere? Normally with an aircraft like this, I tend to go for Marksman 1, Engine Guru 1, which improves acceleration. Actually, given the acceleration feels pretty sluggish on this plane, that would probably be better the other way round. Engine Guru 1, Marksman 1, build through probably cruise flight or maybe battle tested, and then go up to Engine Guru 2, which will give you extra speed. And then go to Marksman 2, and then I'd be looking for evasive target. So if we pick a different pilot, you can see the effect here. Just keep an eye on this manoeuvrability here. Now this is going to be a highly trained pilot I'm going to put in here, and as you can see, Group Captain Martin-Baker MB.5. Okay, there's a bit of an error there. That's not actually the name of the player. It's actually Cow. I hadn't noticed that before. Anyway, you can see that even though this is a highly trained pilot, that air acrobat skill of Millie Elliott is really quite powerful, because the manoeuvrability has come down to 97. However, you should see a difference in the airspeed, because I've got Engine Guru 1 and Engine Guru 2 there. Also Marksman 1 and Marksman 2 to improve the accuracy of the guns. Let's just put Millie Elliott back in, and this time you can keep an eye on the speed. There she is. And as you can see, the airspeed rating has dropped by 1. So my recommendation would be, if you have Millie Elliott, and if you have, you've probably got her in a more highly trained state than I have here, I would pop her in this aircraft to get the maximum benefit from manoeuvrability of her air acrobat skill. And as you can see, that's brought the manoeuvrability rating up here to 100. Now, the Spitfire 16 will certainly outturn you, but you are getting into the region where this is a capable turn fighter, provided you know what you can turn against and what you can't. Here we have a spreadsheet showing the effects of my choices on the base characteristics of the aircraft. You will saw those in the aircraft statistics section. They're repeated in columns C and D. The effects of my choices for the manoeuvrability build are in columns E and F. The difference between the two in absolute terms is in column G, and in percentage terms in column H. Now I've got two further builds here, one with the combined injection mixture boost system, and then another one over here with the uprated engine. We'll talk about those in a moment or two. As far as the guns on the manoeuvrability build are concerned, we've improved the accuracy which is the dispersion angle to U and I, the way the shells spread out as they leave the muzzle of the gun. That's gone down from 0.6 to 0.47, 21% improvement. We've also widened the auto-aim angle, so you can afford to miss by 2.75 degrees. The game will correct your aim and you will still hit your target. On survivability, we're using a lightweight wing frame, so therefore we've lost some hit points. They're down to 280, which is a loss of 20. We've also lost a little bit of damage resistance. It's down to 40 from 43, and it was already a bit low, but for me, critically, we haven't all reduced what is an already poor fire resistance figure. It remains at 30. We have managed to improve the rating on the airspeed a little. It's gone up by 6 points to 60. That's because we've got the cruise speed up to 332, a 46 mile an hour improvement, or 16%. And that's coming from the polished skin. Maneuverability is up to 100. We've reduced the turn time by over a second, nearly 13% improvement. We've got the roll rate up to a rather nice 184. And if we look down here, we've also got the maneuverability, the yaw maneuverability up by nearly 20%. Bearing in mind that this build is with Millie Elliott, who has that special air acrobat skill, which is better than the aerobatic skill that it replaces. But that's all she's got, plus the aerodynamics skill. And then on the altitude performance, we have improved the climb rate by 1 foot per second. Well, hoorah, you're not going to notice the difference there. Some other effects that are only listed in text in the UI, we've improved the chance of fire from the guns by 10% and the chance of criticals by 15%. We have 10% more likelihood of getting wing damage, 17% more likelihood of engine damage, and 17% more likelihood of pilot injury. On the airspeed, we've got 13% acceleration in dive, a 1.5%, 4% acceleration when we're using boost, 15%, that says in diving, I think that's actually 15% when we're accelerating without boost, and a 15% engine cooldown rate. We are not using that consumable, so we'll take that out. And just a reminder, that's with Millie Elliott. So we'll move on to the second build, and this time we've substituted the lightweight power unit with a combined boost mixture injection system. These are all fully calibrated, incidentally. That's what the 478s mean up here, by the way. And we've also changed the pilot. I thought that if you were going to do this, you'd probably want a pilot with different skills. So we have a very fully trained pilot here. Aerobatics expert, aerodynamics expert, engine guru 1 and 2, marksman 1 and 2, and then firefighting as well, but not Millie Elliott, and that's crucial, and I'll explain why shortly. On the guns, we now have further improved the dispersion angle, so it's even tighter. It's down to 0.43. That's a 29% improvement. The auto-aim angle is still better at 2.75, but no better than the previous build. On the survivability, we've still got a rating of 6. We've still lost those hit points because we've still got that lightweight wing frame in place. The damage resistance is 41, which is very slightly better than the previous build. Again, there's no effect on what is that poor fire resistance figure. Got the airspeed up to 63. The cruise speed has gone up to 334. The boost speed, in theory, is now 508. You're not going to make that. You can't make the 460, so that's actually not that much of an improvement in my opinion. And you've lost 1.2 seconds worth of boost, which I think is pretty poor. The maneuverability has come down quite badly. Now, of course, this is not Millie Elliott, so some of you may be thinking, well, what would happen if you had Millie Elliott, but with all those extra skills that this pilot's got as well? Well, that would still only go up to around about 90. So at that point, I'm beginning to think it's not maneuverable enough to be fighting as a pure turn fighter. At least that's my viewpoint. You may take a different viewpoint. So the turn time is down to 8.2 seconds. That's 0.44 improvement, actually. That's a 5% improvement. And the roll rate is 181, still pretty spectacular. But if you look at the yaw maneuverability, it's only improved by 0.6%. You may still prefer this, but none of that excites me enough to want to move away from the maneuverability build. As I can say, if I could get to the boost maximum speed of 508, I might think differently, but I can't get anywhere near that. And for me, it's just not worth losing all that maneuverability to get an unattainable extra boost maximum speed. And bear in mind, the main thing here is that you've got 19% acceleration with boost, which I was hoping might get me to something around 460, as is promised by the base figures of the aircraft. It doesn't. At least I couldn't get it there, except in a dive. And finally, we come to a similar build, but this time with an uprated engine instead of either the lightweight power unit or the combined boost mixture injection system. The values for the guns are the same as the previous build, so we've got that 0.43 dispersion and 2.75 degrees auto aim angle. We've still got a rating of 6 on the survivability, still losing the hit points off the aircraft. The damage resistance is 41 like the previous build, but this time we're down to 23 fire resistance. And bear in mind, that's with the bonus characteristic, which mitigates that by 10%. If you don't have that bonus characteristic, that becomes 33% worse, and that's 20. And at that point, I think you have to consider the fire extinguisher instead of a first aid dressing kit, or at the very least, probably both fire resistance and firefighter. And personally, I don't like using my pilot skill points on those things. Maybe you take a different view. And you might be encouraged by the following figure, because the airspeed rating has gone up to 65. We've got the cruise speed up to 368, which is an 82 mile an hour improvement, very nearly 30%. We've even increased the boost maximum speed a little. Not that it matters, because you, as I keep saying, like a broken record, you can't actually get there, by 9 miles an hour to 469, and you've got your full boost of 8 seconds. Again, the manoeuvrability is identical to the previous build, so it's a rating of 88, and again, we're using the pilot that we were using in the previous build, so if you had a Millie Elliott with all these sorts of skills, then that would be a rating of 90, so not much of an improvement, frankly. And the climb rate has gone up to 451. We didn't mention the climb rate on the previous one. It's gone up to a much better 488 feet per second, but again, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of climbing and fighting in this aircraft. So that should give you a feel for what you can do with the manoeuvrability, particularly if you use Millie Elliott, what you can do if you try and use a combined boost mixture injection system or an uprated engine. And for me, neither of those two builds provide benefits which encourage me to move away from the manoeuvrability build, and particularly in the case of the uprated engine, because of that effect on the fire resistance, I'm significantly deterred from trying that. However, if you take a different view, then you've got some indicative figures in front of you to show you what's going on and what mitigations you might like to use for those. Okay, now it's time to go and see how this plane performed in battle. Here's the map for the forthcoming battle. It's Albion, the final argument variant with 5 sectors. And it has a central repair base, which means that this is both strategically and tactically important for this battle. On one axis, we have a pair of military bases, one near each spawn point, and then on the other axis, we have a pair of make-weight garrisons. Best way to win this is to possess the air base for longer than the enemy, your own military base for certainly longer than the enemy, and to try and hold their military base for a significant period of time. You can also just try and hold your local assets, your garrison, your military base, and the air base as well. If we look at the order of battle, we can see that it's a tier 8 battle, so it's as bad as it gets for the MB.5, and the enemy has also got an extra tier 8. Let's just go through the aircraft. We have an unspecialized ME-209A, another unspecialized IL-20, which is slow, although good at taking sectors. Almost the obligatory P-61, which is specialized, that's in our favor, and we have an unspecialized RB-17, which may or may not be good, it depends on how well it's flown. We also have a Yak-9U, a sniper, a Ki 93, which is one of the less maneuverable Japanese heavies, and then myself in the MB5. The enemy has an ME-109TL, which is a very hard-hitting aircraft and reasonably quick, a Junkers 288C, which is unspecialized, so probably overmatched by the RB-17. They also have an ME-329, and it's beginning to look as if their sector capture ability might be at least as good as ours. They don't have a P-61, but they do have a specialised P-82B, which is nearly as good. They do have a specialised Vampire. They also have an ME-265, again, waiting it for sector capture, this team, and then they have a very hard-hitting Bf-109K6. Now, as it happens, I think I can outturn all of these aircraft, but it's going to depend on being able to establish myself here, and that could be tricky. So let's see how this battle worked out. As we go into battle, let me remind you, this is my own replay file. It's not one of the World of Warplanes replay files, therefore you'll see me looking around using sniper mode. And most importantly, the reticle will be accurately placed. Now for me, as the turn fighter on my team, the critical sector is the repair base. I'm going to head there, see if I can lock it down. And I've got plenty of my team coming with me, so it initially looks promising. Looking around at the military base, and I spot immediately we haven't really sent anybody there, which is why I've signalled that we should go there. See the enemy P-82B in the distance. Head towards it, then see the P-61 is after it, so I switch my attention, trying to shoot down this ADA. I don't get it, and the enemy are already very close to taking this sector. I get on the tail of the Vampire, start shooting at it. Unfortunately, the enemy has got this sector, and before I can kill the Vampire, I lose my pilot and I'm shot down. It's a bad start. Now, look at the military base. That's what I'm looking at. No point going back to the airfield. We need to secure our military base, so that's where I'm going to go next. Don't let a bad start deter you. Going to go and try and secure the military base. They haven't got theirs. If we get ours before they get theirs, we've got a chance of pulling this back fairly quickly. The 2 air defence aircraft are still in place, and that's what I'm going to try and shoot down and help my bots secure this sector. And it is the bot bomber there. That's a TU-2. First ADA comes within range just... Now, these can be difficult to hit, these J4Ms, but you can see that my guns just really aren't taking out Tier 7 heavy bots particularly well, and I've overheated them, and I'm having to manage them very carefully. Whittling it down, I'm aware there are red arrows on the right. You can see them around the enemy aircraft. They're coming in fast. They're now threats. Just managed to avoid being shot down by the Corsair, and then I get on its tail. High hit point pool, this multi-roll, and probably a little bit close. Optimum distance for these guns, I would say around about 1,300 feet. The closer you get, of course, the wing-mounted weapons become a problem. Having to manage the guns to knock down this aircraft, but I do. Unfortunately, the enemy have now got their military base. We haven't got ours. It's not looking good. Their bomber is above the sector. Not my target of choice, but I don't feel that I have a choice. Fortunately, it turns out to be heavily damaged, so I can take it down, even with my slightly anemic weaponry. 2 bursts. Just managed to get it, and that secures the sector. There are still threats to be dealt with. I felt the P-61 should be doing that, but in fact he had come along to do exactly that. He shoots the Ac-9U. I choose to finish it off. Just managed to kill it before I ran it. Now we've got a ground attack to deal with. Of course, high hit point pool, so I'm not going to take it down very quickly. I'm not the only thing shooting it, and he's got more to shoot at than me, so fortunately I can get him down without taking too much damage. Now we have a Hornet coming in above us. The P-61 nearly wipes me out. That would have been unfortunate. He didn't. I'd have liked the P-61 to push on here and leave the Hornet to me, but he doesn't. And it turns out that I'm glad that he doesn't in a moment, as you'll see. The P-61 heavily damages the Hornet, and then I finish it off. Now we need to start thinking about other sectors. We're 4-1 down. It's not looking good at this stage, but it's not a lost cause yet. One of us spots the bomber. I ping the bomber in the hope that the P-61 will turn around. And my goodness, teamwork! He actually did. He's going after the bomber. Now I will go for the airfield. I regret the loss of the P-61, but we haven't really got a choice. I've got to take my chances. And my team is actually getting pretty close to taking this. I can knock down one ADA. We'll do it. Unfortunately, it's a J4M. I swing away. It lands one shot, and of course, in today's World of Warplanes, one shot means instant critical and loss of fighting capability. And now I'm desperately trying to whittle down this aircraft before I get shot down. Guns just do it. We take that aircraft, I swing round, I get shot by the Corsair. Swing round again to try and finish off the Corsair. Secure that. Thinking about repairs, and an Su-9 obliterates me from nowhere. Of course, I'm able to spawn in at the airfield, looking for targets. The Su-9, it's probably going to go down to the 2 planes that are assaulting it there. I fly towards it, it's the only target. It's flying away from me. I don't want to be dragged out to the airbase, and there is a target coming in. It turns out to be the bomber at low altitude. I'm not really the sort of thing that should be taking this. I do shoot it and damage it, but then there's plenty of other red items coming in behind it. I need to turn my attention to those. I get onto a Vampire. As expected, I can outturn it. Doesn't try and really contest that. Guns are good enough to take out a fighter. Get onto a multi-roll. Realise that I've got lots behind me. Swing round, and fortunately I get onto the K6, which is a good aircraft for me to try and remove. Overheat the gun slightly, which means it takes longer than it should. I get a bit too close here, but fortunately I am able to take it off. But now I've got at least 4 enemies to go after. Brief shot at the multi-roll and break off, because something will be on my tail. I want to weave around. Shoot at the TU-1. They're probably not the right target for me, and he shouldn't be really flying it like this though either. And critically, whilst we're in the middle of this furball, I've lost my engine again, my team have managed to take the enemy military base, and ours is not under a significant threat, and we are turning this battle around. Go after the vampire. I am able to outturn it. It looks like he may get saved by friends. I'm getting hit, and down I go. Whilst I was waiting to respawn, our military bases took a garrison. True, we lost the air base, but if we can get this garrison over here, and that's my next objective, we're going to be 4-1 up, and we'll pull back on their lead significantly. Heading towards the ADAs, and it turns out I don't need to do anything here. I just saw a bomber flying across, presumably that was the RB-17, and he did a good bomb drop. We're 4-1 up, and the enemy has probably made the mistake of concentrating too much on the middle here. There's a lot of them there, but we're now 4-1 up, and we are eating into that lead rapidly. And the aim here now must be to try and get superiority. Start shooting at one of the ADAs. It's just at the edge of my range, so I decide there are probably better targets. There's an ADA that's trying to size me up. I'm on the edge of the airbase, so this isn't in the furball. I am looking to make sure that there aren't other threats, but I can take my time over killing this aircraft. As you can see, around my aircraft there are red arrows. All of them are small. If any of those become big, it's at least worth taking a look, and it may be that moment to break off and attack the incoming aircraft, because it could be coming for you. As it happens, that doesn't occur, so I'm able to kill that ADA. Spot the K6 coming straight for me. Obviously I'm not going to go head on, that would be silly, but he shouldn't turn with me. Probably doesn't know the capabilities of this aircraft, and he gets comprehensively outturned. No surprise there. And on realising that, he abandons that tactic and starts weaving around trying to throw me off, which he's doing fairly well until he chooses this tactic. Flying into the ground will not help, and that secures the airfield airbase for us, and now we do have superiority. I just avoid the TU-1. This is going to be tight. I'm on low health. He has a rear gunner. Fortunately, I set him on fire. I have set up the guns to do that, of course. It's tight, but I get him before he gets me. Heading towards repairs, but we have superiority. The game is won. A hard game, only 2 aircraft on our team left, 3 on theirs. This is about as good as it gets in a tier 8 battle for the Martin-Baker MB.5. Let's take a look at the outcome of this battle, and we can see from the centre it's a 4 chevron battle or a grade 2 fighter. That grossed 173,823 credits, with just under 58,000 of that coming from a premium account bonus. There were some expenses, 9,750 credits for repairs to the aircraft, and as this is the press account, I was also paying for my consumables on this occasion, and that's 15,000 credits. Aircraft experience, 5,345, the base there 3,449, with the premium account bonus of 1,724 credits and another 172 coming from other bonuses. Free experience, 267 in total, 181 base and 86 being added by the premium account. Go to the personal score tab, we can see that none of the class specific missions were complete. Close in the case of 2 of them, aerial targets destroyed and capture points received. Not quite so close with destroyed when defending, and that's why we only got the 4 chevrons as opposed to 5. 13,815 personal points, sectors captured 3, 13 aerial targets destroyed, 5,208 damage with 6 critical hits coming off the cannons. Lost the aircraft 3 times, capture points of 400, that was split 160 for defending, 240 for attacking. We look on the team score tab, we can see that would have been enough for first place on my team by chevrons, and indeed the enemy team, second place by personal points. You would expect the P61 probably to be on top in this battle, so it proved here. The RB-17, Probably could have done a bit better. And some other contributions down here of a slightly lesser stature on the enemy side. Good effort by the ME329. The 109K6, again, you would expect that to do well even in a Tier 8 battle. And a decent effort from the Junkers 28CC. And then some also fairly consistent contributions from the P82B, 109TL, and the Vampire. You can see why we were struggling to win that battle and didn't pull it out until the end. There you have it. That's my review of the Martin-Baker MB.5, which I think is a decent turn fighter, albeit slightly undergunned, and it is a shame that it's hard to get up to that advertised maximum boost speed in level flight. It is, after all, a reward aircraft for an anniversary, and those don't tend to be particularly strong planes. Well, I hope you found that helpful, and that if you did, you'll come and see my future content. But until then, this is the Noble Q, signing off.